Reality can be unforgiving. The truth can sometimes hurt. And sometimes, that truth might cost you a lot. You might have seen pictures of this unit about the internet. It debuted and spread its wings at the high-end audio show in Munich last year. Then the momentum grew and grew and grew. From the studio equipment manufacturer ZAHL from Germany, Mike ZAHL brings you the HM1 with an $8,500 price tag. Shall we discuss? The German manufacturer ZAHL have been creating audio equipment for studios for decades now. I wasn't aware of them, to be honest with you, but they have mixing desks all the way up to $100,000. So you can imagine, this is not going to be cheap. This is not going to be cutting corners, and this is designed to be in a studio environment where it's supposed to be consistent, reliable, and as unobtrusive and garish as possible. As you can see via the design, it really does remind me of the also another studio equipment, professional equipment, the Benchmark AHB2. We run a pair of them here on our reference system on the channel. But be that as it may, a lot of hype has been surrounding this unit and its price tag, $8,500. For the environment of studio equipment, I don't believe this is too high. All we need to do is take a quick look at Genelec speakers, some of the mixing desks that goes into studios, monitors, etc. Including microphones. There are microphones worth $10,000 minimum. So, is the price of this unit too high? For an audiophile, maybe. For an engineer? For a studio? I don't think so. This is a review for audiophiles. This is not a review for the professional market, though we will touch on that. I've got a great deal of experience with professional studio equipment over the years, and there are characteristics in regards to this unit that does imbibe that, and that might not be to your liking. Money sometimes doesn't always tell. First and foremost, why don't we take a tour around the unit? The headphone amplifier consists of two parts. The transformer, not just a power supply, but we will get into that momentarily, quite heavy as well, and the headphone amp itself, which feels pretty much as, as heavy as the transformer, incidentally. And separating these two is this umbilical cord that looks like the K&HA 300 Mark II. Actually, we review up here at some point, I'm sure. With these multitude of pins. So this cable is about, I'd say, 50 centimeters or so. So that's the distance you will have to separate these two units. I don't advise putting the units on top of each other. I mean, you can, but some people have informed of slight noise. I have not experienced that myself, but for now, let's yeet that over there. We don't need it. This is the transformer, with the winding coils inside, obviously. And on the front, we find an adjustable knob for the regions for the voltage. On the back, we have obviously the round connection for the umbilical cord, AC connection, and on and off switch. Very tactile, with some very, very nice feet. This thing is quite heavy. This thing is insanity build quality-wise, because obviously this is designed to be in a professional environment, and it can't go wrong. And it bloody shouldn't for $8,500, right? So I'm going to place that over here, slightly off camera, because we don't need it. This is the star of the show. These are the heat sinks. These will dissipate heat. This unit does not get warm in the slightest at all. It's actually running a lot cooler than the Benchmark AHB2, which was quite shocking. Let's take a tour around the back of the unit first, because there are quite a lot of complicated things in regards to the front that we will need to discuss in detail. Once you connect your umbilical cord, you have the following. We have two balanced XLR inputs. Also pairing these balanced XLR inputs is a pair of RCA inputs for your phono, etc. We will come back to those switches momentarily. We have a pair of XLR balanced out, and we have a pair of RCA outs, which are just direct out. This links to the XLR ins, number one, and from what I understand, they're not paralleled. This line out signal is way before volume, etc. So, happy days. And then we have a pair of switches. This is a 15 dB gain boost for signals such as phono, where it's as close to 2 volts as possible and it's very low signal, you boost that. This high gain 15 dB boost, in my experience, doesn't seem to work the same way as the Blisses does, obviously, because this is designed to amplify that input signal, and if you use that, for example, if you're not getting enough volume range for a quiet track, you will distort your DAC, so you'll have to implement a digital volume decrease by about 10 dB, for example, from the May, and so it makes things a little bit It's actually designed for a completely different purpose than boosting volume, for example, just because your headphones are not loud enough, so bear that in mind. That covers the back of the unit. Pretty straightforward. Some interesting things, but yeah, pretty straightforward like other headphone amps. This thing is so freaking light, it's ridiculous, it's great. But it's dense and it's actually well balanced and weighted. It's quite surprising, genuinely. We have some interesting things on the front though. On the left-hand side of the unit, we have an on-off switch. This is actually a shallow button, clicks very nicely. Underneath that, we have a toggle switch for headphones, headphone amp pre, and just pre-out, basically. Keeping that on headphones. Under this, we have a 4-pin XLR out, 6.3 single-ended out. Going to the other side of the unit, we have a lot of knobs in a professional studio environment manner. These are not huge volume knobs like you would find on example like a Serene behind me or a Bliss. These are very well weighted and ridged and really nice. Anyway, we're going to get to that in a minute. We have 2 volume pots. Using an algorithmic potentiometer and linear potentiometer, there have been some custom designs to make sure that the channel separation for each of these volume pots is perfect. And honestly, in my experience, there is no bleed. It's absolutely fantastic. Not only that, there is logic circuits inside here to shut off these volume pots as soon as you go down to flat. It literally clicks off the signal coming in. It's fantastic. So that in a professional environment, you never need to worry about channel bleed, etc. for your 2 sources. So 2 volume knobs, and I will discuss how I've been using this in my environment to great effect. These 2 buttons between these volume pots shut the signal path completely off and disengage that logic circuit. Or if you press them together, you can bring both inputs into the mix simultaneously. So if you're running your PC on one and you're running your reference system on the other, you can not only mix and match so that you can actually get signal from your PC or your DAC, but you can use it to excellent effect when AB-ing DACs in the most accurate way I have used on this channel in the last 2 years. It's been fantastic. I've had TG2 on 2 and May on the other. Not only can I bring one up, disable it, bring the other up, disable it, but I can mix and match as well. So I can have my screen reader on the left volume pot and obviously everything else on my reference systems here on the channel on the right. That, I'm telling you, alone is worth $1,000 just by itself. There are a further 2 buttons underneath these 2, which completely bypasses all the functionality and features that are below these 4 knobs. This is basically the analog EQ, the stage knob, no, not crossfeed, and it completely bypasses all of that. So you can actually test AB, the EQ preference you've set for yourself, and flat. I'm telling you, this thing is insane for features. Absolutely fantastic. Okay, finally, meat of the bone. The most interesting aspect of this amp are all of these knobs. Let's start with the top left one, Class A servo. This knob on the top left, it's smaller than the volume pots, enables and disables Class A servo or just Class A. Nestling between these three knobs on top, we have four more. The bottom left is designed to fix imbalances. So for example, from your hearing, within the room, or anywhere else that you might actually find in a mix. Sometimes it might be left tilting or right tilting, and it's such granular adjustments that it's not like yoink to the left or yoink to the right, obviously being your left and right, not mine. But it's so subtle. Sometimes you could actually have one click to the left or one click to the right and you feel something is weird. What's happening? And it's the slightest variation to the left or to the right. It really is good for those people who have got slight difference hearing from their left to their right. It's absolutely fantastic. Or during a mixing process. We will come back to the knob on the right in a moment, but the two knobs in the middle controls the treble region and the bass region with a 5 dB swing on either direction. And in my experience, which we will discuss in the sound section, it's been absolutely freaking fantastic in regards to how it deals with the EQ and how it deals with headphones. One thing I forgot to mention, this amp, every aspect of it, every feature of it is pure analog. There is nothing digital in this amp to be seen. And that is quite a remarkable feat for some of the functionality here. The knob on the complete right is what is being called the stage knob. Now, this does not work like a crossfeed where some signal from the left is being fed to the right. Obviously, our hearing is not singular, is it? When we listen to a pair of speakers, our right ear can hear both left and right speakers at different times and different volumes, obviously. So crossfeed takes this into account, obviously increasing the volume on one side by a slight margin and then obviously delaying it by a little bit too, giving you that speaker effect where it throws sound in front of you. No, this doesn't do that. From what I understand, it looks freaking complicated. There are certain variations from the left channel or the right channel. It identifies those variations, increases the volume, adds a little crossfeed only to that aspect, giving you that stage control where it seems to expand the mix and shrink the mix. But I will discuss this in the sound section in far more detail because there is a lot to actually discuss around it. It's not as straightforward as making my headphone have a stage this huge. No, it's not like that. It doesn't work like that. Moving on, transformer. This unit entombs the winding coils. Every part of the power supply is separate for the left channel, for the right channel, and for the logic circuit, obviously on the front of the unit for all of these functionalities I've been discussing with you. So from me and Cameron's discussion on GoldenSound, you should need to watch his video on the technical aspects of this HM1 on the headphone show. It was absolutely fantastic, and it really does go into a lot of detail about how this unit is actually formed. But obviously, you know, here we mainly concentrate on functionality and sound characteristics. But the design choice for this was so that we can completely separate the transforming of the voltage from the wall into the headphone and keeping that as far away from the headphone amp as possible, but yet containing the current reservoir, as it were, if we can use that terminology, for the actual power inside this unit with the filters. Everything's been separated, so you don't need to worry. No noise will come from the power supply into the headphone amp. Every aspect of it has been separated, not only from the headphone part itself, but even the left channel and the right channel, and all the functionality on the front. Think of it like this: 3 separate power supplies to provide power for 3 separate things. Left channel, right channel, and the front of the amp. I've never seen anything like it. It's freaking insane. Phew! Now that's a lot to assimilate very quickly. The headphone amp has got features galore, inputs galore, and controls galore. But that is just the start. Shall we talk about the functionality of this unit? Okay, let's discuss the functionality of the unit. I'm going to keep this aside here because we don't need the transformer at the moment. Let's start with the 2 separate volume knobs, which is very, very important to our use case and maybe to you too. You can use this volume knob on the right, for example, to bring in your reference system so that you can keep it isolated completely away from your PC or your Mac, and it's just going via a streamer like mine is through the red over there. May, Bliss, red, or monoblock AHB2 May and red, and I can have that on the right hand side volume pot, and I can separate it completely, shut it off utterly from my day-to-day life. The other knob, being the other input, can be actually used for my PC, for YouTube, for everything else. Or in the scenario I mentioned earlier, if I've got 2 DACs in for review, for example like the Dave and the TT2, and I want to see if there's any difference, how much of a difference there is between the 2, I will bring up the Dave on the right volume pot, I will bring up the TT2 on the left volume pot, and then with a push of a button next to each volume pot, I can mute, enable, disable. So I can just go left button, right button, left button, right button, left button, right button, enabling and disabling, engaging and disengaging the circuits for each of these inputs, output into my headphones simultaneously, so I can see how much of a difference there is for those DACs for the channel when I'm bringing you a review. This is a fantastic feature. You're not using digital volume, you're not trying to volume match weird things digitally, and if your voltage is the same, 4 volts for Dave, 4 volts for the TT2, you can get a fantastic accurate reading of what those DACs are doing for performance, etc. And that's just one functionality in an audiophile reviewer's life. For example, in a studio environment for engineers, they can bring in the control room and another part of the studio if those are being fed to this amp, or 2 separate signals, or a variety of functionality, disengaging and engaging effects, etc. coming in from one side to another, and it's basically like having a mini mixing desk here. I used to use a 14-channel mixing desk for this purpose, and it works fantastically well. Being able to completely shut it off so that you're not just turning the volume down is also a nice perk too. But then the other functionality, which is just insane, is disengaging and engaging the circuit for the functionality and the EQ and the stage knob and everything else with the button, and disabling it and bypassing it, going straight from input to output with a push of a button. That is another fantastic feature too. And there is a slight sound variation to my ears, but I will discuss that in the sound section. Make yourself a coffee. This review is going to be long. It's going to be time-stamped so that you know exactly where to jump around in the video, but I recommend wholeheartedly, if you want to buy an $8,500 unit, you need to be knowing everything I can possibly provide for you so that you seem to understand every innate part of the amp, sound section and functionality section. Going to the EQ underneath these knobs, it seems to be, to my ear, not providing a bass boost above 150 Hertz, 200 Hertz. It's not gonna bleed into the upper bass and lower mids. No, it seems to be congregating in the sub bass and mid bass category in the most linear way possible. And honestly, the only difference sound-wise I'm hearing from the EQ when I'm boosting by 1 dB or 2 dB, for example, in the hi-fi and Susvaras, I find it's not affecting the overall quality, but what it is affecting is the ability for the driver to take that EQ, and some headphones I found can't. It doesn't sound too right, but on other headphones it's perfect. The only limitation you find yourself having is actually the drivers from the headphones themselves. Class A and Class A servo. This feels like a dual functioning amp. You got a full Class A with a linear power supply, switching the toggle to the right, where the stage is pretty much the same, though the vocal seems to be a little bit more intimate. It's a little bit more punchy. You do lose a little bit of clarity and performance, definitely, but you gain euphoria. You gain the euphoric sound characteristics of a non-linear, alright, give me exactly what is coming in and put it out to the drivers of the headphones. No, it's a little bit warmer, it's a little bit more hefty, it's a little bit more dense. When going to Class A servo, you find that takes a little step back, it's a little bit leaner. And then the resolution seems to be increased by a little bit, detail retrieval is definitely better, and it's a little bit more of a slightly cooler sound to my ears. But we're jumping the gun, we're talking about sound already. I'm telling you, this review. And finally the stage knob, but I'm going to put that at the last part of the sound section. Let's talk about the amp sound.
Alright, okay. Guys, listen to me. I'm looking at the timeline of this video and what I see is basically 1 hour and 5 minutes of footage, which means this is the longest video on CMA channel ever made. And I cannot allow this. I'm sorry, we are splitting this video in two. So here you had, the specs, hardware and functionality. Next time you're gonna get sound impressions because those sound impressions are basically a video on its own. So you're gonna get them next time. But if you would like to hear about them very soon, then join our Patreon because they're gonna get it probably next day or very, very soon. So until the next time, like and subscribe, join the Patreon, join Telegram chats, yada yada, and we see each other next time. So see you there. Bye.